we're going to be looking at Proverbs, the 14th chapter today. Proverbs 14 is simple, it's straightforward, and it's a good thing because there's 35 verses in this chapter. Chapter 13 only had 25 verses, and yet I went so long discussing those verses, and I have to say, chapter 13 had some really meaty topics, but I spoke so long that I couldn't upload it to Facebook and had to do the class all over again. The second time I did it, it got uploaded all right. And so here, chapter 14 is some simple, straightforward comments. And mostly what we have are opposite, contrasting ideas. In typical Hebrew poetry, a statement is made and then a second statement is made, saying pretty much the same thing but with different words. And in this chapter, what we'll see a lot of is a statement being made and then a second statement saying almost the exact opposite is made to make this contrast, to give us a full picture of what the author is talking about. So let's begin. Chapter 14, verse 1. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish tears it down with her own hands. A wise woman is a blessing to her husband, a blessing to her children, a blessing to her community, a blessing to her church. And he says that. He says a wise woman, she's a builder, but a foolish woman tears things down. And how many times have we seen that today, where homes are being ruined? And sometimes, I have an aunt, she was a little bit crazy, and she got in an argument with her husband and burnt their house down. You know why she did that? Because she was really foolish. She was what Solomon was talking about. Literally tore down her house with her own hands. He's given this contrast between the wise and the foolish. It almost reminds me of the old saying, don't take a dump in your own foxhole. I mean, what's wrong with folks who make a mess of their own life and ruin it for others as well? Verse 2. He who walks in his uprightness fears the Lord, but he who is devious in his ways despises him. Gets us back to chapter 1, the beginning of wisdom. Fear the Lord. Verse 3. In the mouth of the foolish is a rod for his back, but the lips of the wise will protect them. The mouth of the fool is a rod for his back. Can you visualize this? Here's his tongue. It's coming out. It's coming out. It's coming out. And it whips him on the back. It's painful. It's irritating. It's damaging. And he says that's what the mouth of the fool does. He takes a beating because he says so many foolish things. And we see that repeated over and over. But the lips of the wise will protect them. They know when to talk and when not to talk. Verse 4. Where no oxen are, the manger is clean. But much revenue comes by the strength of the ox. Here's one for the ox. If you don't have any ox, it's pretty clean, but you're not going to make any money either. There's usually a price to pay for most work. There's a maintenance fee involved. My dad had an excavation company. We had tractors. I remember most Saturdays being down changing oil. And because my dad depended on these motors, and it was easier to change the oil than have one go down and not have the revenue. Did we complain about having to change the oil? No, because it meant we got to live and we got to eat. Someone said if you're going to build a crystal cathedral, you better buy a lot of Windex. Here's what he's talking about. That there is stuff that goes on with prosperity. Many years ago, when I was going to school, I was asked to look at a printing press that a company had for sale that the church was thinking about buying, and they realized I had been a printer. And I went to look at this, and they were kind of concerned because the printing press didn't look that good. The sides had been taken off. And I asked the man if the sides were there somewhere, and he said yes. And we put the thing back together, And the man asked me, one of the guys from church asked me, well, why were the sides taken off? And it's real simple. It looks good with the sides off, but when you're trying to make some money, you don't have time to take the sides on and off. You have to make your repair quickly, get that machine running again, and get going. And it's just easier to leave the sides alongside the machine than stick them on and off. It looks good one way, but it really doesn't get the job done. And I think maybe that's what he's saying here. 5. A trustworthy witness will not lie, but a false witness utters lies. 6. A scoffer seeks wisdom and finds none, but knowledge is easy to one who has understanding. That's interesting. A scoffer looks for wisdom. Well, he looks for it everywhere except for where? Except for with God, except for with Scripture. It's easy to find if you look in the right place. 7. Leave the presence of a fool, or you will not discern words of knowledge. 8. The wisdom of the sensible is to understand his way, but the foolishness of fools is deceit. The Greeks, they had that concept, know thyself. No one is more deceiving than a person about himself. I mean, be aware of who you are. Fools deceive themselves. I remember my dad used to say, oh, you're only kidding yourself. You're only fooling yourself. And that's what happens with fools. They're only fooling themselves. Wisdom is sensible in understanding where he's going. A fool, he just fools himself. 9, fools mock at sin, but among the upright there's goodwill. Fools mock at sin. They make light of sin. Hell will not be mocked. You have to take sin seriously, and the upright take goodwill seriously. Verse 10, the heart knows its own bitterness, and a stranger does not share its joy. There's a similar passage, similar concept anyway, in a passage in 1 Corinthians 2. In 1 Corinthians 2, verse 11, Paul writes, for who among men knows the thoughts of a man except the spirit of the man which is in him? Only a person knows what he's going through. He knows the amount of grief or sadness or trials or difficulties going through. He knows these things. And the same thing's true. No one knows the amount of joy that a person goes through. We can sympathize with the person, but we really don't know the depths of his sadness or the heights of his joy. And we need to be careful that we don't pretend like we do. The house of the wicked will be destroyed, but the tent of the upright will flourish. Kind of reminds us of verse 1, doesn't it? Some destroy their own home. Some destroy it with bitterness, with addictions, with unfaithfulness. We need to be careful how we live. 12. There's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. I probably remember that passage best of all. There's a way that seems right. A fool can convince himself that he's doing all right, that he's got it made, that he's got it all right. But the end is death. We just can deceive ourselves. Man is a great deceiver. 13. Even in laughter, the heart may be in pain, and the end of joy may be grief. Reminds me sometimes of funerals. You ever notice that at funerals there's oftentimes a lot of laughter? Our memories are joyful, and we're very happy, and yet we may be in a lot of pain. We may be in a lot of grief, and I think that's what he's talking about here. 14, the backslider in heart will have his fill of his own ways, but a good man will be satisfied with his. A backslider. Somebody's gone back. He loves sin, the way he once loved righteousness. His own ways. He no longer looks for what is wholesome and what is godly. He is looking for whatever brings him the pleasure for the moment. And the good man, he has a conscience that bears good, that he has done good. He has a great testimony for him. Verse 15, the naive believes everything, but the sensible man considers his step. 16, a wise man is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is arrogant and careless. 17, a quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of evil devises his hatred. Man of evil devices is hated. I'll get that. 18. The naive inherit foolishness, but the sensible are crowned with knowledge. 19. The evil will bow down before the good, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. That's interesting. You know, over the years, I suppose there have been literally hundreds of people who've come to the church building looking for a handout, looking for some kind of help. And for whatever reason, they never go to the bars. They never go back to their friends who aren't working. They never go to these other places, but they come to those who are people that they know are good and are helpful. And here he says, the evil will bow down before the good, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. Now they realized, and maybe they didn't realize the evil of the way. They just need help. They come to us. 20. The poor is hated even by his neighbor, but those who love the rich are many. That's a sad thing, and what he's really telling us is that there's just this nature within men to despise the poor and love the rich. And even the love for the rich is not true. They're fair weather friends. If their money is gone, they leave. Remember the prodigal son? He had a lot of friends when he had money, but as soon as the money ran out, his friends took off. 21, he who despises his neighbor's sins. He who despises his neighbor sins, but happy is he who is gracious to the poor. Don't despise your neighbor. Love your neighbor. Don't despise those who are poor. Be gracious to the poor, and you'll be happy, he says. 22. Will they not go astray who devise evil? But kindness and truth will be to those who devise good. 23. In all labor there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. There is honor in all work. All work is honorable. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're working hard and if you're putting in a day's labor, it is of profit. Mere talk, and go back to the idea of sluggards, all he does is talk about it, that this leads to poverty. 24. The crown of the wise is their riches, but the folly of fools is foolishness. 25. A truthful witness saves lives, but he who utters lies is treacherous. 26. In the fear of the Lord there is strong confidence, and his children will have refuge. In the fear of the Lord there's strong confidence. Don't you have some confidence because you love God, because you fear God, because you honor God? And your children will have refuge. They will know what is right and what is wrong. They'll know the way to go. 27. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, that one may avoid the snares of death. 28. In a multitude of people is a king's glory, but in the dearth of people is a prince's ruin. 29. He who is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who is quick-tempered exalts folly. Quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. The only thing we should be quick in is try to understand. Slow to anger, he has great understanding. And he who is quick-tempered is a fool, exalts folly. 30. A tranquil heart is life to the body, but passion is rottenness to the bones. The idea of passion, we think of passion sometimes as a good. The guy has a passion for his job. That guy has a passion for his wife. He's passionate about his hobbies. Passion here is the idea of stress. The stress, tranquil, the opposite of being tranquil is being stressed, being worked up. And that often leads to, well, we know it leads to heart disease and cancer and other illnesses. It can be very dangerous. And so it's a very real truth here. Tranquil heart is life to the body. That's what we want to lead, a tranquil and quiet life, Paul says in Timothy. 31, he who oppresses the poor taunts his maker, but he who is gracious to the needy honors him. We need to help those who are poor. We need to be careful that we don't pass them by when we could have helped them. 32, the wicked is thrust down by his wrongdoing, but the righteous has a refuge when he dies. The wicked just bring it on themselves. That's what he's saying. 33. Wisdom rests in the heart of one who has understanding, but in the heart of fools it is made known. What's made known is that they're fools. The heart of wisdom gives us understanding. 34. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. God help our country. Think about this. Sin is a disgrace to any people. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. What would our country look like without God? I wonder if we're getting a glimpse of that right now. People don't want God in the schools. They don't want God in the courtroom. They don't want God in their lives. Maybe God says, okay, I'll give you what you want. I read this poem. I don't know who wrote it. The author was unknown. It says, there is no peace in the world because there is no order in the nation. There is no order in the nation because there is no harmony in the home. There is no harmony in the home because there is no beauty in the character. There's no beauty in the character because there is no righteousness in the heart. I hope our country learns to turn to righteousness, turn back to God. Verse 35, the king's favor is towards a servant who acts wisely, but his anger is towards him who acts shamefully. So here's a list of contrasts, a list of different ways to look at life, and most of them are pretty simple and straightforward, aren't they? Things for us to think about, things for us to meditate on, things for us to try to emulate in our lives. I hope you have a great weekend. May God bless you.